Hello, everyone. I'm Janet Salmons, Research Community Manager for Sage MethodSpace, and I'm pleased to be joined here today by Safary, Wa-Mbaleka, and Arceli, Rosario. And we're going to talk a little bit about their work with this handbook of qualitative research in the Asian context. But before we get started, if you are new to MethodSpace, this is a web community hosted by Sage Publishing, and we're interested in everything to do with research, design, planning, conducting, analyzing, writing about what we find, and sharing results in all different kinds of ways. And as you can see at the heart of this diagram, we have teaching and learning, because we think that whether you are a brand new researcher or a very experienced researcher, we all have something to learn. And this month, we're kicking off with this interview. We're going to be focusing on cultural dimensions of research and academic writing, thinking about kind of considerations for research within our own cultures, when we venture into other cultures, and when we do research across cultures with a variety of research participants and collaborative partners. So I'm delighted to have both of you here to help us think about some of these questions this month. Why don't you just start by briefly introducing yourselves? Arceli?
All right, so I'm Arceli Rosario. Safary and I met when we were teaching at the Adventist International Institute of Advanced Studies, and it was during this time that we worked together that he invited me to be part of what he was trying to conceive as the Asian Qualitative Research Association. I gladly joined him, and there's another one, a colleague, Sonia Fokofoka, and the three of us sort of like initiated this Association of Qualitative Researchers. We started in 2015, and our aim was to empower qualitative researchers. So I was part of that work. This association grew big until we thought that it was the right time, after conducting many trainings on qualitative research. We thought that it was time for us to write a book. So that was a big part of who I am. I became a qualitative researcher and got involved in the lives of many people. So I stayed at that school for 10 years. Safary moved to another school in Africa, in Kenya specifically, and then to the US. And I have moved presently to the Adventist University of the Philippines, where I served as its president.
Great, thank you. Safary?
I'm Safary Wa-Mbaleka, and I approve everything that Arceli has said. We have worked together since, I think, 2012. We've been colleagues and friends, and we really think alike as far as qualitative research is concerned. And I'm currently serving as an associate professor of leadership in higher education at Bethel University. And here I teach research classes, and mainly qualitative research classes, and I'm a methodologist on dissertations. This is only in the doctoral program of educational leadership here at Bethel University. And I'm just so excited that this dream that we had about maybe back in 2018, actually we started thinking about this a number of years ago, but we kind of kept it on the background. But it has become a reality in 2022. We now have the Sage Handbook of Qualitative Research in the Asian context, and I'm I'm just excited that we have this resource, and that will be a great blessing to many people around the world.
So could you start by, we can see here, on the screen, where, some of your contributing authors are from. Could you just talk a little bit about some of the cultural contexts and, commonalities and differences across these cultures? So Arceli, why don't you start?
Yes. So when we conceptualize the book and specifically who the authors would be, our first consideration was, of course, authors coming from Asia. So we thought of, okay, so who are the experts in qualitative research in Asia? We started looking at those very near us, meaning faculty and alumni of the Adventist International Institute of Qualitative Research, because that was where ACRA, the Asian Qualitative Research Association, was born. And it was there where we heavily invested our time in terms of training, developing resource speakers in these trainings. So we focused on these people, and fortunately, people at the Adventist International Institute of Advanced Studies come from different places in the world. Our students and faculty represent around like 80 countries. So we got them because they're expert in qualitative research, also because we know them and it was easy to reach them. And they had engaged with us in many ways, in many occasions. So we thought of them, and some of them actually, at the time when we conceptualized the book, had already moved to their countries. So for example, we had faculty alumni who already went back to Argentina, to Romania, and other places. But we were also intentional in thinking, who are the experts in qualitative research in Asia? So we reached out to experts that we have connected with. In fact, we had one coming from Hong Kong, from in Kazakhstan as well, in Vietnam, and of course in the Philippines, in other places in Asia. And we also identified qualitative researchers from other countries, for example, the United States, who had been conducting qualitative research in Asia.
Safary, what would you like to add?
Yeah, if I may go to the question of commonality, I think you had kind of mentioned that. What is really common in the cultural settings in Asia? For me, as a foreigner to the Asian context, I worked there for 8 years, specifically in the Philippines, but I got to travel to different parts of Asia, Southeast Asia specifically. There were things that were common, and you see these going through the whole handbook, and that is the concept of respect, for example. Respect may be expressed differently in different parts of Asia, but the concept of respect is very strong in Asia. And I think this is common to Eastern cultures, including Africa as well. That people who are in position, people who are in power, people who are older than one is, they deserve respect, and it is expected when we are communicating with them. It is something that has to be taken into consideration. The other commonality in Asia, in most parts of Asia, probably other than South and North Korea, and maybe Japan, most countries in Asia have several languages. So when we are conducting qualitative research in Asia, we have to make sure that we are going to deal with the different linguistic variation. And not only because everybody is from the Philippines, we cannot take it for granted that all the Filipinos will address things the same way, because just to take the Philippines alone, it has 82 languages. And those 82 languages, for those who study languages, we know that language and culture go hand in hand. That means those are 82 subcultures that you have in the Philippines. Indonesia has more than 600 languages. That means Indonesia has more than 600 subcultures. So in addition to having one thing we can call a national identity, cultural identity, you still have some subcultures that when we are conducting research there, even personally, as a foreigner, when I was conducting research in the Philippines, I had to know these differences, to be aware, probably not know everything, but to be aware that, hey, people in the north may react to certain things differently from the people in the south of the Philippines. And so language, respect, and many other details that we discuss in the handbook.
So, well, I mean, it's interesting, that you highlight that point, because I think, for qualitative researchers where, there certainly are qualitative researchers who work with even, big data with big qual, but, the kind of characteristic of qualitative research of being more, people oriented, and, the relationship, that some of the kinds of things that you bring up would be really important for qualitative researchers to understand. So, I wanted to just ask, what, with the work that you've done with the Asian Qualitative Research Association and with the evolution of this book, why are qualitative research methods appealing to Asian researchers? What is it that they like about qualitative methods versus other ways of doing research?
Let's hear from Arceli first.
Okay, so let me begin. I think there are some reasons why Asians are attracted to qualitative research. Let me first speak in my own perspective. So you see, I think as a people, we love to talk. And we love to share matters that are private to us. It's natural for us to, even to people who may not be very close to us, it's acceptable for one to talk of feelings, shall we say, feelings, or how we look at things, or tell our stories. It's easy. It's like natural for us to talk, share with each other, with friends, and even with not so close friends, even with people who just come to the community and ask us to share stories. That is not a problem at all. So when I did my master's and when I did my dissertation, I adapted the qualitative. I chose qualitative research because I felt it's a natural thing for me to do that as a researcher, to talk to people. It's very fulfilling for me to go to, so for my master's, I had to retrieve oral literature in, in a village. I had not met these people, but it was easy for me to do that. So as a researcher, it's not a problem at all. And when I did my dissertation, I did with women university leaders. And those were women I had not met in my life. And they were coming from, I would say, very respectable place. And I did not even doubt for a second that they would not give me time. So it's like I was looking at my perspective. I like to talk to people, and I did not doubt that they would also love to talk to me. And it proved that way. So I'm speaking specifically as a Filipino, but I think it's true to, I don't know, maybe not all. I don't know, Safary. I haven't traveled really or talked to people in all of these Asian countries, but I think to most, we like to share our stories. And it's like, it's very fulfilling for us to do that. So it's appealing because in qualitative research, you get to do that. Research now becomes a very exciting venture.
Mhm.
Yes.
So, um, given that, kind of tapping into the oral culture and the kind of
Mhm.
storytelling and personal sharing, so, what kinds of methods do researchers favor? So it sounds like perhaps interviews, focus groups, or group
Mm.
interviews. What kinds of data collection methods uh,
Uh-huh.
seem
I would
popular
say,
or preferred?
yeah, I would say like the in-depth interview, the one-on-one interview, which is very intimate and you really get to share your inner thoughts, your deep feelings. This method, data collection method, comes natural
Mhm.
for us Asians. Focus groups too, because it's not a problem to gather people. When you say like, okay, there's a gathering and then okay, let's go. And I'm talking, I'm referring when you are doing this in the village, it's easy to do that. You
Mhm.
just ask permission from the gatekeepers. We call it, in the Philippines, we call it like barangay captain or village leaders. And when that's facilitated, people come. And even if they meet people for the first time, they are not shy. So focus group is good as well. One methodology that I have used and earned some kind of success is photo voice, which
Mhm.
is intensive and highly engaging, demanding in terms of time.
Mhm.
But with usually I do this with a group, of course, because it needs several people to do it. So far, we have had success. Our participants come and we have high, like retention of participants.
Mhm. Anything you'd
And
like
even
to add?
when, yes.
Anything you would like to add, Safari? What kinds
Yes.
of methods are you
Yes, I wanted
seeing?
to take. I think this is where we complement each other.
Mhm.
To take an outsider's perspective of Asia. For me, meeting and interacting with Asians from different parts of the continent, I classify Asia into two categories. One category is exactly what Arceli has said, which is represented from my experience, represented by the Philippines, Indonesia, and maybe India, where you meet people within 5 minutes, you have become friends. They will share a lot of information with you. It's like they trust you. I mean, if you show that you're trustworthy, within 5 minutes, you can definitely get a lot of personal information, and you are asked also to share a lot of information, personal information. So with these specific countries, it's only now that it came to me actually as Arceli was sharing. It never crossed my mind in the past. In these specific countries, conducting qualitative research is, I think, it's a lot easier because people are willing to share of themselves. It's part of their being nice, being kind, being wonderful to other people. I think that's the mindset of what is happening there. Then you have on the other side, you have countries, I would say it's maybe predominantly Buddhist countries. I'm looking at Thailand, I'm looking at Myanmar, I'm looking at maybe others outside of Buddhist countries like China, Japan, South Korea. People are closed. I mean, you can initiate conversation, but to sustain a conversation will take some time, unless it's you're talking to people who have traveled a lot. then that is different. But if it is people who have not really left their country, they may not be too much open to foreigners. And so I want to believe for a foreigner who's trying to conduct research, qualitative research in those countries, it will take some time to build trust, so that they can conduct research. And so that is what I've seen as an outsider. But exactly what Arceli said is true with my experience in the Philippines. I conducted and published a lot of research in the Philippines. That's exactly what it was. Within 5 minutes, I knew a lot of information from anybody I talked with because they're willing to share.
So, thinking about, not only, the people who have studied with you and have now, gone back and they're, back into their own countries, and, people who might be using this book, how do you think this will be beneficial to Asian researchers who are deepening their skills, to conduct research? And how do you think it will benefit non-Asian readers?
Okay, let me start with that. I think I can focus on how can the book be beneficial to Asian researchers. Firstly, this is the only book, I would say, based on we tried to search, has there been a book published on qualitative research in the Asian context? So far, this is the only one as far as we know. So this is beneficial because people, we speak in ways. I'm talking about myself. I'm an Asian. I speak in ways that are easy for other Asians to understand. The way we express ourselves, our thinking patterns, that's how I tried to communicate, how Asians communicate, being an Asian myself. So it is easy, and I've tried to show my works to other Asians. How easy is this? And they said, oh, this is easy. We haven't thought that qualitative research, which we consider difficult, can be presented in this way. And another one is because it is inspiring for Asians to see that we cited Asian works of Asian authors in qualitative research, and also studies in qualitative research conducted in Asia. I think that is what makes it appealing. They see, they read findings of research studies done in their context. So that is what makes it appealing to readers. It's like, oh, so this is done in my country, because I think we were intentional and we instructed our authors. For example, I wrote a chapter on qualitative research, and my co-authors and I we did like a meta synthesis. We gathered studies on photo voice done in Asia. And we tried to see, so in Malaysia, in Thailand, in Vietnam, in different countries, what studies were done using photo voice. And I believe that one can draw our audience. Yes.
Right, because it sounds like, it's really an empowering thing to be able to turn to a resource that celebrates kind of your own kind of ways of thinking and doing things, rather than trying to read something and thinking, well, how does this apply to me? or how do I translate this into what will work in my setting? And I very really want to highlight the point you made about citing studies, so that people reading this can see, well, it's not only that the handbook becomes kind of a roadmap to find all of this other body of work that might be of interest. And what would you like to add to that, Safary?
Yeah, I want to look at it first from the general perspective and then from the foreign perspective. From the general perspective, I think this is very, very important because we were able to recruit people from many different Asian countries and also people outside of Asia who have had experience in Asia. I think this helps us to really contextualize qualitative research in a very particular way. A number of chapters, we combined the authors in such a way that we'll have an Asian and a foreigner, so that the Asian can bring the original Asian perspective, and the one who's from outside of the Asian context could help fill in the gaps where things are needed for the foreigners. Now, from the foreign perspective, as a researcher who was not born in Asia or raised in Asia, I think this is really, 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 really a great resource, because even myself, as we were working on it, I co-authored some chapters, for example, how to establish a strong relationship between a researcher and a participant in the Asian context. I was one of the authors. Arceli was one of the authors of that chapter, and another one was from Russia, and another, so another one was also from the Philippines. And it was interesting as we were going through this chapter, certain things that I never ever imagined at all that we need to keep in mind. Things that for me, who is a foreigner, wouldn't have thought about. There's another chapter written by a contributor from Thailand, 2 contributors from Thailand, where it is all about the culture, the big culture, and where it comes from and what it means for a qualitative researcher. And of course, for each chapter that we had, we made sure we required all the contributors to show, okay, these are the concepts. What do we need to know in the Asian context? And because we had people who were coming from different parts of Asia or had worked in different parts of Asia, they were bringing in different perspectives of Asia to their culture. It's no longer just data collection in general. When I'm collecting data in Asia, what else should I know in addition to the skills, generic skills of data collection? And so with this, I think it's a great asset for students and researchers, faculty who are foreigners in the Asian context, who are conducting research in Asia, because now they are not just going to blindly implement the concepts and the skills in the Asian context, but they will really try to contextualize and be aware of the cultural diversity and be able to collect trustworthy data, collect data effectively and efficiently. Here in the US, just a quick illustration. Here in the US, if I'm dealing with a grown-up, I don't need to go through another person to ask permission for this person, for an adult, to take part in my study. But as you read in some of the chapters, it was amazing when I was reading this. Some parts of Asia, and I'm now going to mention which country, because one reason I don't remember, the other reason I want you to read the handbook. You need to ask permission from the elders of the community. They were the ones to give permission for an adult to participate in the study. I'm not talking about just the gatekeepers, no. I'm not talking about gatekeepers from that perspective. I'm really talking about, did you ask permission? Did he give permission for me to participate? Because if he did not, then that is against our cultural practice. I'm bringing shame to the chief, the authority. So it's not just about accessing the site. It's about showing respect to the elders and getting their blessing before I can ever participate. If they don't want, then I don't want to do it, because it is showing that I don't show respect to them. This is not something you'll find in the West. I mean, you know, I'm an adult. If I say yes and you have permission to access my university, you just have to deal with me. If I say yes, that's it. If I say no, that's it. But in some Asian context, that will, I mean, in the West, that will count as coercion. If somebody in authority says yes, then you must. That will be translated as coercion.
Right.
But in those specific settings, some specific settings in Asia, not all over Asia, it's not coercion. It is highly expected. And so for me as a foreigner, I need to know about this when I'm going to a specific place, how these things work, so that I will not offend people who are participating in the study.
Right. And it sounds like, well, you know, there are a lot of other skills that would go into that, like being able to explain in a very clear way what the research is about and how it will benefit, you know, whatever the you know, topic is that you're studying, and, you know, being able to explain, which I think, you know, that's a whole skill set. And it's also a matter of time. You know, if you're thinking, okay, I'm going to just like fly in, you know, I'm going to do 20 interviews and I'm going to fly home. You're like, no, probably not. So I'm looking forward to introducing this handbook to our MethodSpace readers, and those who have access to the Sage Knowledge database will be able to access the book through there, and you know, they can, you know, it's a library resource that you can download by chapter and read. So is there anything else that you would like to add?
Arceli, do you want to go first? You are muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think what is interesting about this handbook is we try to put within the 40 chapters many, I would say, qualitative research methodologies. For example, case study, photo voice, Delphi technique, phenomenology, narrative inquiry, ethnography, discourse analysis. So it's like almost complete. So students, those who are doing their thesis and dissertations, and also the faculty who are advising, they can think of a methodology, and there is a high likelihood that they will find this methodology in this handbook. And then we have a section there about data collection, and we have tried to address different data collection methods, and building relationships between the researcher and the participants, and also in data analysis frameworks, and also how to use the software, qualitative data analysis software. So it is sort of complete from the philosophical foundations of qualitative research, specifically in the Asian context, until the writing. Am I right, Safary? Yes. Yes, until publication. And we have addressed their culture. Safary, I think you want to talk about that one, culture, how culture is integrated into or considered in research.
Yes, this is a very comprehensive qualitative research handbook. in the Asian context. You get not only the skills, the knowledge of qualitative research, which you'll find in many other textbooks, but it is contextualized. That is the biggest contribution I think that this handbook has. So we talk about a lot of, every chapter is contextualized to the Asian cultures. And I want to use the plural because there are so many cultures in Asia, although we have some commonalities. And so anybody who wants to conduct qualitative research in Asia, please do yourself a favor, read this handbook. You may not necessarily read all the chapters, but everything that you want to do, you want to conduct a case study, read the chapter on the case study. You want to know how you're going to interact with people, read the chapter on how to develop that friendship or that trust. You want to collect data, read, if it is online or face-to-face, we have chapters for specific ones. You want to analyze data, what are the subtle things that you need to keep in mind in the Asian context? You will find that information. You want to publish research. What should you be aware of from the data that you collect in Asia, or you want to publish in Asia? Why do people even publish in the Asian context? You'll find all that information there. Why do people do things the way they do them in Asia? That is the philosophical foundation. It's one of the early chapters in the handbook. So do yourself a favor, read as much as you can read from that handbook. You will not regret it. Whether you are an Asian or non-Asian scholar, the fact that you're conducting qualitative research in Asia, this handbook is for you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for talking with us about it, and look forward to really being able to focus on these kinds of questions on MethodSpace in the Asian context, and we'll be including other global scholars who give us some additional perspectives, and I think really helps us to build the kind of community of scholars who can learn from one another and really kind of uncover insights into the kinds of problems that we have today and the kinds of questions that we want to answer. So thank you both, and we'll look forward to a rich month of content.
Thank you, Janet. It was nice to be involved in this discussion.
Yes, thank you, Janet. We really appreciate this conversation with you.